When your book is almost exclusively scenes of dialogue, people just having conversations with each other, there are a whole lot of tricks you can pull off to make the visuals work more than just shots of people's faces. We've talked before about clever ways of framing a dialogue scene in the previous episode about Hawkeye, linked here, but this episode I wanted to talk again about colour, and how linking certain colours to different moods and feelings can really elevate what otherwise might be page after page of two people just looking at each other. You're watching Strip Panel Naked, I'm Hass, and I'm going to show you some of the cool stuff lurking in the pages of some of the best comics. So we're going to take a look at Jonathan Hickman, Tom Coker and Michael Garland's Black Monday Murders, a book published by Image Comics. This is a book with some lovely colour work. Previously, when I talked about Jordi Belaire's colours in Pretty Deadly, a topic of that was the limited colour palette across a page and across a scene. Garland also utilises that approach incredibly effectively across all three issues that have currently been published. But he does do it in a slightly different way. And I want to primarily look at the third issue, as there's a conversation in it between two characters. I've removed the dialogue so we can focus on the visuals, and as a bit of a setup, I'll say no more than this character here is the good guy, the detective, and this character here is the apparent bad guy. That's about as much context as you need to know to look at the colour work. So there's one obvious thing in the palette across these pages, and it's how it really uses two key colours, red and blue. Often the colour you see paired with blue is orange, in films it's something called the orange and teal effect, and you'll see it throughout most action blockbusters. The reason orange and teal works is they are complementary colours. You figure this out by looking at a colour wheel and seeing whatever colours are opposite each other. Blue, orange. Those colours will always work nice when used in the same palette. They blend. You can also find colours that work with each other by looking at the colours side by side. Colours that are a few steps away from each other are more susceptible to clashing, not working as cleanly. What Garland does in these pages is push the palette a little so it's almost on the verge of clashing. Rather than orange and teal, he elects to go red and teal, red and blue. That subtle change is enough to make the colours a bit more noticeable in this set of pages. And Garland doesn't always pick colours that aren't complementary. A look at issue 1 shows scenes like this with the detective, where they're all rendered in this kind of orangey brown, colours all next to each other on the colour wheel. But when he wants to create a more dangerous effect, a more dangerous atmosphere, when something bad is happening, more often than not he resorts to this blue and red approach. You can see it near the end of the first issue here, and near the beginning of the second issue here. And let's talk about why those colours. Blue is calming, it's not a dangerous or exciting colour, but it's often reflective of coldness or powerlessness. Patti Bellantoni in If It's Purple Someone's Gonna Die gives the example of American Beauty and Kevin Spacey's grey-blue office. It tells us his lack of power. She also gives in that book a great story about the use of blue and red together. This is a quote. There's a great story about Knut Rockne, the famous Notre Dame football coach, who back in the 1920s painted his visitors' locker room blue and won every game season after season. Theory is he totally spaced out his opponents with blue and fired up his own team with red. True or not, it's a great illustration of another of the influences of blue. Blue is the quintessential colour for powerlessness. And that's exactly what Garland is giving us in these pages. The detective is seeking to understand the truth this other man holds. In essence, that blue reflects his powerlessness of that situation. The other man, in red, holds the keys. Red is powerful, deep, angry. It sits completely opposite in terms of feelings to the calm in blue. And if we look at this page, this series of 8 panels at the bottom with the detective and the man, if we change those colours around, if we made the blue red and vice versa, the dynamic suddenly starts to shift. Without knowing what they're saying, obviously it completely changes the feel of control. Now the detective seems angrier, more impassioned. It's worth making another point too. As one character in this series says the word Jesus, this chap, the aforementioned bad guy, replies with, "No, not that, the other." If we want to look at this gradient as red meaning evil, hell, or some similar concept, and the blue meaning good, heaven, or whatever, you'll start to notice even more thematic ideas come through in the gradient and colouring by Garland. And if we take this earlier example from issue 2, where we've got that gradient from blue to red, you can see that effect. Previously, the men have been standing in relative blueness in this scene, muted blue, and now on this page we start to see the shift from blue to red. The blue on the left side, and the red transitioning in from the right, as to where the penultimate panel of the background is pretty much entirely red. There's a change of states, almost, you can see it flooding in. And in the example earlier in the interview room, it's the same effect. The red sits below the blue, as though it weighs more, and again in this example from issue 1, the same effect. It's pushing that heaven-hell divide more each time it's brought up. And it means moments like this, at the end of issue 3, mean more than just danger or violence, they take on a deeper meaning of weight and hell thematically. It's really quite hard to overstate the power and value that colouring has on a story, and it's directly and consciously impacting the way you receive that story you're reading. Michael Garland is proving he's got a real talent for building these elements into the frame and into the texture of the story as a whole. Once again, colorists are not there just to colour skin the right tone or to make sure that sky is the right shade of blue. They're there to add and build the story along with the other artists on the book. That might mean the sky ends up blue, it might mean it ends up green, or it might mean it ends up as a red-blue gradient that tries to tell you a bit more about the world surrounding these characters. Colorists deserve more praise for their stunning work like this. and the book wouldn't be anything near as great without it, or tell you anywhere near as complex a story. Thanks for watching. If you're a fan of Strip Battle Naked, please consider supporting our Patreon, where there's reading lists, extra articles and analysis, tons and tons of annotated comic page breakdowns, and a monthly comic book club, where we get together and discuss and analyse a book in a chat. And you can follow me on Twitter at Hassanoui for more comics talks and analysis, and don't forget to hit subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest Strip Battle Naked videos. We'll see you next time.